The Galactic Council provoked too far now humanity refuses to bargain. Part 1 on the cold steel bridge of the United Earth defense vessel Perseverance. Captain Daniel Hicks stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the stars blur past the main viewport. The ship hung in the silent dark near the edge of known space. Far from Earth, far from help. The only sound was the low hum of life support and the occasional beep from the comms panel. Then, without warning, the holographic projector in the center of the room flickered to life, casting a pale blue glow across the faces of the bridge crew. Before them stood Ambassador Vrel of the Galactic Council. His body was tall and segmented, covered in smooth black chitin that clicked softly as he shifted his weight. His eyes, dark and multifaceted like a beetle's, stared straight ahead with no warmth. He did not bow. He did not smile. He simply spoke. His voice translated through the ship's system into flat, emotionless English. "Humanity has violated galactic resource protocols," Vrel said. "Your mining operations beyond the Sol system exceed permitted limits by 312%. This is unacceptable." Daniel kept his expression calm, but his jaw tightened. For years, Earth had followed the Council's rules, even when those rules made no sense. They had given up rich asteroid fields, shut down deep space refineries, and accepted unfair trade tariffs, all to keep the peace. And still the Council treated them like children who needed to be scolded. "Ambassador," Daniel said, stepping forward, "those mines feed over 2 billion people. Without them, entire colonies go dark. We're not hoarding resources. We're surviving." Vrel tilted his head slightly, a gesture that might have been curiosity or contempt. "Survival is not a right granted by the Council. It is a privilege earned through obedience. You have failed to obey." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Lieutenant Carter, the young comms officer, gripped the edge of her console. Ensign Rojas, barely out of training, looked down at his boots. Only Commander Lisa Morgan, on loan from Earth Command and standing just behind Daniel, met Vrel's gaze without flinching. "What are you asking us to do?" Daniel asked, though he already knew the answer. "You will cease all off-world mining operations beyond the Sol system within 30 standard cycles," Vrel replied. "You will surrender control of your deep space outposts to Council oversight, and you will pay reparations for your violations." "And if we refuse?" Daniel asked quietly. For the first time, something like amusement flickered in Vrel's voice. "Then the Council will impose immediate sanctions. Your ships will be denied docking rights at any Council-affiliated station. Your data networks will be severed. And if you resist enforcement, military quarantine will follow." The words hung in the air like ice. Military quarantine meant blockades. It meant warships surrounding human space, cutting off supplies, choking Earth until it submitted. It had happened before, to younger species who dared to question the Council's authority. None of them had lasted long, Daniel wanted to argue. He wanted to remind Vrel that humanity had fought its own wars, survived its own collapses, and rebuilt from ashes more than once. But he knew it would do no good. The Council saw humans as loud, messy, and short-lived, a species that burned bright and fast, then vanished. They didn't understand that humans didn't break easily. "I'll need to consult with Earth Command," Daniel said at last. "You have 30 cycles," Vrel said. "Not a moment more." The hologram vanished, leaving the bridge in silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lisa stepped forward, her boots clicking against the metal floor. "They think we'll fold," she said, her voice low but sharp. "They think we'll beg for scraps like we always have." "Maybe we should just comply," Carter said, her voice trembling. "I mean, what choice do we have? They've got hundreds of species behind them, fleets bigger than anything we've ever built." "Complying means watching colonies starve," Rojas muttered. "My sister's on Europa. If those mines shut down, her whole sector loses heat and oxygen in 6 months." Daniel turned to the viewport again, staring out at the endless black. He thought of his father, who had worked in the Mars shipyards, welding hull plates with calloused hands. He thought of the kids in the lunar domes who had never seen rain but dreamed of oceans. Humanity wasn't perfect, but they had earned their place among the stars. "We're not begging," Daniel said finally, "and we're not backing down." Back on Earth, President Lisa Morgan, no relation to the commander, though both women shared the same stubborn set to their jaws, sat in the emergency war room beneath Geneva. The walls were lined with screens showing live feeds from every major colony, every defense post, every research station. Around the table sat the leaders of the Global Defense Council, generals, scientists, diplomats, all of them exhausted from days of crisis meetings. At the far end of the table, Dr. Kevin Ortiz tapped his fingers on a data pad. His lab coat was wrinkled, his glasses smudged, but his eyes were sharp. "We've been preparing for this," he said. "Not for war exactly, but for independence. Our quantum comms network is ready. It can't be tapped by Council tech. Our new shielding holds up against plasma fire better than anything they've fielded." Commander Ryan Ellis, head of the Stellar Response Fleet, leaned forward. "Our pilots are trained. Our ships are faster than they think. But we can't win a straight fight." "Not yet. We don't need to win a straight fight," President Morgan said. "We need to show them we won't be erased without a cost. A high cost." She looked around the room. "For decades, we've played by their rules because we thought it was the only way to survive. But survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about keeping your dignity, your voice, your future." A quiet settled over the room. Then one by one, the leaders nodded. On the Perseverance, Daniel received the message from Earth an hour later. It was short, just 3 words. "Stand your ground." He turned to his crew. "We're not surrendering," he said. "We're preparing." Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But somewhere in that vast dark, humanity began to ready itself, not for conquest, but for respect. And for the first time in a long time, the Galactic Council had no idea what was coming. The Galactic Council provoked too far, now humanity refuses to bargain. Part 2. While the Galactic Council waited for humanity to fold, Earth moved in silence. No grand announcements, no angry speeches, no public panic. Instead, in shipyards hidden behind the red dust storms of Mars and nestled in the icy rings of Titan, humans worked through the night and day. Welders fused hull plates with steady hands. Engineers calibrated new drive cores that hummed with a sound like distant thunder. Technicians loaded cargo bays not with weapons alone, but with seeds, medicine, and spare parts, because survival meant more than just fighting. At the Deep Space Initiative lab on the Moon, Dr. Kevin Ortiz barely slept. His team had spent years developing a new kind of faster-than-light communication system, one that didn't rely on Council-approved relays. Instead, it used quantum-entangled particles to send messages instantly across light years, undetectable and unbreakable. Now, with the Council watching every known channel, this system became humanity's lifeline. Within weeks, every human ship, colony, and outpost was linked through Kevin's network. Orders, warnings, and updates flowed like blood through a body, fast, quiet, and vital. Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Ellis drilled his pilots harder than ever before. Stationed aboard the carrier Horizon in lunar orbit, he ran simulation after simulation, testing tactics the Council would never expect. "They think we fight like them," he told his squadrons during a briefing. "Big ships, straight lines, honor duels in open space. We don't do that. We hit fast, vanish, and hit again from somewhere they didn't see coming." His pilots, men and women with call signs like Ghost, Raven, and Spark, trained in asteroid fields, using the rocks for cover. They practiced slingshot maneuvers around gas giants, riding gravity wells to appear behind enemy lines. They learned to jam sensors with bursts of solar static or fake distress signals. Ryan didn't care about glory. He cared about winning, and winning, he knew, meant never letting the enemy feel safe. On Earth, factories that once made cars and phones now churned out armor plating and reactor parts. Farmers in Kansas and Siberia grew extra crops to stockpile in orbital silos. School children learned basic engineering and first aid, not because they were being drafted, but because everyone had to be ready. President Lisa Morgan made sure the message was clear. This wasn't just the military's fight. It was everyone's. But Earth didn't act alone. Quietly, through back channels and encrypted messages, Lisa reached out to other species the Council had pushed aside. The Qatari, a nomadic people who lived in massive bioships shaped like spiraling shells, had once been told they could not settle near Council worlds because their biology disturbed the balance. They remembered that insult. The Jil ocean dwellers from a water-covered planet had been denied representation for centuries because they lacked the temperament for governance. They, too, listened when a human envoy spoke of fairness. One evening, a small unmarked vessel docked at a hidden station near Pluto. Inside was a Qatari elder named Shivra. She met with Lisa in a plain room with no cameras, no recorders. For hours they spoke, not as enemies, not even as allies yet, but as equals who had both been told they didn't belong. By dawn, Shivra agreed to share early warning data about Council fleet movements. It wasn't a declaration of war, but it was a start. Back on the Perseverance, Daniel Hicks received his new orders. He was to patrol the outer edge of the Kuiper Belt, watching for Council scouts. But his real mission was different. Test the new phase cloaking system Kevin's team had installed. It didn't make the ship invisible, nothing could do that, but it bent light and energy signatures just enough to look like a drifting ice chunk on long-range scans. During a routine sweep near Sedna, Daniel's crew spotted a Council patrol, a sleek silver vessel with 3 rotating rings. It moved slowly, scanning the area. Daniel held his breath and gave the order to power down all non-essential systems. The Perseverance went dark, cold, silent. The patrol passed within 500 kilometers, close enough to see with the naked eye, but its sensors saw nothing but empty space and frozen rock. When the alien ship vanished into the distance, the bridge crew let out a collective sigh. Carter grinned. "It works, for now," Daniel said, but his eyes held a new kind of hope. As weeks turned into months, the Council grew uneasy. Their spies reported strange activity, human ships appearing where they shouldn't, signals vanishing mid-transmission, supply routes shifting without warning. Ambassador Vrel demanded answers, but Earth gave none. Instead, they kept building, training, and connecting. In a small town in Oregon, a retired engineer named Frank Miller, once a designer of deep-sea submersibles, was brought back to help adapt pressure-resistant materials for space hulls. In Nairobi, a young programmer named Tasha Cole wrote code that could mimic alien comms protocols, letting human ships impersonate Council vessels for short bursts. In Buenos Aires, a former dancer named Leo Ramirez now taught zero-gravity combat to Marines, using rhythm and balance to gain the upper hand in close quarters. Humanity wasn't just preparing for war, it was proving that every person, no matter their past, had something to give. Still, no shots were fired, no threats were made. Earth waited, and the Council, for the first time in centuries, began to wonder if they had made a mistake. They had assumed humans would crumble under pressure. Instead, they were growing stronger in the dark. Ambassador Vrel sent another message, this time sharper, more urgent. "Cease your covert actions. Comply immediately or face consequences." President Morgan read the message, then deleted it without reply. In orbit, Ryan Ellis watched his pilots return from a night drill, their ships gliding in like shadows. On Mars, a new destroyer slid from its dry dock, its hull still warm from welding, and on the Perseverance, Daniel Hicks looked out at the stars and whispered, "We're ready." The silence was almost over. The Galactic Council provoked too far, now humanity refuses to bargain. Part 3. The spark that lit the fire came not from a warship or a secret base, but from a small civilian freighter named the Dawn Runner. It carried no weapons, only crates of antibiotics, nutrient paste, and water purifiers bound for the Europa colony, a settlement of scientists and families living in ice tunnels beneath Jupiter's frozen moon. Captain Maria Lopez had flown that route for 7 years. She knew every checkpoint, every customs officer, every delay, but she had never expected to die for it. The Dawn Runner was 3 hours from Europa when a Council patrol intercepted it near the Ceres Belt. The patrol ship, sleek in silver with the Council's triple-ring emblem glowing on its hull, ordered Maria to power down for inspection. She complied, lowering her engines and opening her cargo logs as required by treaty. But the patrol demanded more. They wanted to board, to search every container, to hold the ship for further review. Maria knew what that meant: days of waiting, spoiled medicine, children on Europa going without treatment. "I'm carrying humanitarian aid," she said over the comm, her voice calm but firm. "You have no right to delay it under Galactic Charter 7. The patrol commander, a rigid officer from the virile species, did not argue. He simply said, "Power down completely or be fired upon." Maria hesitated. She thought of the fever ward on Europa, of the little girl who needed the antibiotics in Hold 3. She kept her engines idling. "I cannot comply," she said. The patrol ship fired without warning. A single plasma bolt struck the Dawn Runner's bridge. The ship broke apart in silence, its pieces scattering like dust in the void. There were no survivors. News of the attack spread faster than any Council sensor could stop it. Kevin Ortiz's quantum network carried the footage to every human world in minutes. People saw Maria's last transmission, her steady voice, the flash of light that ended it. They saw the Council ship turning away as if swatting a fly. On Earth, cities fell quiet. In orbit, crews stood at attention on their decks. On Mars, workers stopped their shifts and gathered in the domes to watch the replay. Grief turned to anger, and anger hardened into resolve. President Lisa Morgan did not call for war. She called for truth. Standing in the United Nations chamber, with every nation's flag behind her and every human colony watching live, she spoke plainly. They killed a woman who was saving lives. They did it because she said no, and they thought we would accept it. She paused, her eyes steady. We will not. Within the hour, Commander Ryan Ellis received his orders. Not to attack Ceres, not to chase the patrol ship, but to strike where it would hurt the Council most, not in pride, but in control. The target was Relay Hub Alpha 7, the central communications node for the entire Orion Spur. Every Council ship, every surveillance drone, every diplomatic message in that sector passed through it. It was heavily guarded, surrounded by sensor buoys and drone patrols. But it had one weakness: it was old. Built centuries ago, before humans even reached the moon, it relied on outdated shielding and predictable patrol patterns. Ryan's fleet gathered in the shadow of a dead comet, far from prying eyes. 12 ships, all newly built, all painted matte black to absorb light. Among them was the Perseverance, now upgraded with Kevin's cloaking field and Ryan's own tactical upgrades. Daniel Hicks stood on the bridge checking his crew one last time. Carter adjusted her headset. Rojas ran a final diagnostic on the weapons array. Everyone knew what was at stake. "Remember," Ryan said over the fleet channel, his voice low, "we're not here to destroy. We're here to send a message. In and out. 10 minutes max." They moved at night cycle when the hub's automated defenses cycled for maintenance. Using the comet's debris as cover, they slipped past the outer buoys. The cloaking fields held. The drone saw nothing. At 0 hour, Ryan gave the signal. The human ships emerged from the dark like ghosts. Energy pulses knocked out the hub's outer turrets before they could target. Electronic warfare pods flooded the area with false signals, confusing the defense AI. Within 90 seconds, boarding teams in armored pods latched onto the hub's main access ports. Inside, it was cold and sterile, lit by flickering blue lights. The human Marines moved fast, disabling security drones with electromagnetic pulses and bypassing locked doors with hacked council codes. Their mission wasn't to kill. It was to overwrite. In the central core, tech specialist Jay Wilson jacked into the mainframe. His fingers flew across the holographic interface as he uploaded a single file. It contained no virus, no bomb, just words. When the hub came back online minutes later, every council ship in the sector received the same message on every screen, in every language. Humanity does not bargain under threat. Then the humans vanished. By the time council reinforcements arrived, the fleet was gone, leaving only empty space and a humming, fully functional relay hub. No damage, no casualties, just a message carved into the heart of their network. Ambassador Varel watched the playback in his chamber on the council homeworld. His claws tapped against his armrest, a rare sign of agitation. "How did they get past our sensors?" he demanded. No one could answer. On Earth, people gathered in streets and plazas, not cheering but standing together in quiet unity. They had struck back, not with rage but with precision, not to destroy but to declare. In the Europa colony, a doctor held a vial of antibiotics that had finally arrived on a new freighter. She looked up at the ceiling of ice above her and whispered, "Thank you, Maria." And in the deep dark between stars, Daniel Hicks guided the Perseverance home, knowing this was only the beginning. The Council had drawn blood. Now humanity had drawn a line. The Galactic Council provoked too far now. Humanity Refuses to Bargain Part 4. The attack on Relay Hub Alpha 7 sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council that no one expected. For centuries, the Council had spoken with one voice, firm, unchallenged, absolute. Now that voice cracked. In the grand chamber on the Council homeworld, species that had sat in silence for generations began to speak. The Qatari delegation walked out during a closed session, their shell-like robes rustling like dry leaves. The Zil envoys refused to sign a joint statement condemning humanity. Even the viral, once loyal enforcers of council law, asked quiet questions about proportionality and due process. Ambassador Varel tried to hold the line. He called emergency meetings, demanded loyalty oaths, and accused dissenters of weakness. But the more he pushed, the more others pulled away. Rumors spread that human ships had shared sensor data with fringe colonies. that human medics had treated wounded Qatari traders after a pirate raid, that President Lisa Morgan had sent personal messages to elders of minor species, not asking for help, but offering it. Meanwhile, Earth did not gloat. They did not broadcast victory speeches or parade captured tech. Instead, they kept working. Shipyards launched more vessels, farms doubled their yields, schools taught children how to read star charts and repair oxygen scrubbers. Life went on, but with a new kind of quiet confidence. President Morgan knew the real battle wasn't in space. It was in perception. The Council had always painted humanity as reckless, emotional, and short-sighted. To win, humans had to prove they were something else, steady, fair, and worthy of respect. So she made a decision that surprised even her own advisors. She would speak, not to Earth, not to human colonies, but to every inhabited world in Council space. Not through official channels, which the Council could block, but through Kevin Ortiz's quantum network, which bypassed all filters. The message would be simple, unedited, and live. On a clear night over Geneva, Lisa stood alone in a small studio with plain walls and a single United Nations flag behind her. No podium, no guards, no script. When the signal went out, billions across dozens of species saw her face. "I am not here to declare war," she began, her voice calm and clear. "I am here to ask a question. What gives any group the right to decide who deserves to survive?" She spoke of Maria Lopez not as a martyr but as a neighbor. She spoke of Europa's children, of Mars farmers, of engineers on Titan who fixed life support with spare parts and hope. She spoke of the Council's rules, not as evil but as unfair when applied only to the weak. "We do not want your thrones," she said. "We do not want your secrets. We only want what you already have, a seat at the table, the right to speak for ourselves, the chance to grow without fear." Then she did something no human leader had ever done. She turned the feed over to others. A Qatari trader described being turned away from a council port because his ship smelled wrong. A Zil elder showed footage of her people's ocean cities being denied clean water tech. Even a young virile pilot speaking through a translator admitted his squadron had been ordered to harass human freighters, just to remind them of their place. The broadcast lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, the galactic data streams exploded. On fringe worlds, people shared the video in hidden forums. On council planets, students debated it in hushed tones. Memes appeared. Cartoons of tiny humans pushing back against giant council boots. Songs rewritten with human rhythms. Poems comparing Earth's oceans to the Gilles seas. For the first time, humanity wasn't seen as a problem. They were seen as a mirror. Back on Earth, Daniel Hicks watched the fallout from the bridge of the Perseverance. Reports poured in from Kevin's network. Trade ships from neutral systems were docking at human ports not to spy, but to trade. Independent scientists requested access to human research on sustainable habitats. Even a few former council-aligned merchants began rerouting cargo through human-controlled lanes, tired of excessive tariffs and inspections. But not all was peaceful. Hardliners in the council pushed for immediate retaliation. A fleet began to gather near the Proxima border, over 200 warships from loyalist species armed and ready. Vrel himself announced a final ultimatum: unconditional surrender within 10 cycles or total blockade. President Morgan did not flinch. She called Ryan Ellis, Daniel Hicks, and Kevin Ortiz to a secure briefing. No generals, no politicians, just the people who had built this moment. "They think numbers scare us," she said. "Let's show them what unity looks like." Over the next week, humanity prepared not for a battle, but for a demonstration. Every ship that could fly was readied. Not just warships, but colony transports, medical frigates, mining tugs, even old survey vessels. Each one carried a crew who volunteered, not because they wanted to fight, but because they refused to hide. On the day the Council fleet arrived at the Proxima Edge, they found not a single human warship waiting. Instead, they saw a line stretching across the void. 300 human vessels, engines glowing softly, lights blinking in silent formation. At the center flew the Perseverance, its hull still scarred from past missions. Commander Ryan Ellis opened a channel, not encrypted, not coded, but wide open for every ship to hear. "You see our numbers," he said, his voice steady. "You know our will. We are not here to conquer. We are here to exist. Choose, fight us and lose, or recognize us and gain an ally who never forgets a friend or a foe." Silence followed. The council fleet hovered, confused. This was not the desperate last stand they expected. It was a statement. A people standing together, not in anger but in dignity. Then, from the rear of the council formation, a single ship powered down its weapons. It was a Zil cruiser, its hull shaped like a curling wave. Moments later, a Qatari vessel did the same. Then another. And another. Brell's face appeared on Ryan's screen, his usual calm replaced by something close to fear. "This is mutiny," he hissed. "No," Ryan replied. "This is change." The council fleet did not fire. They could not. To attack now would mean turning on their own. As the standoff stretched into hours, a new signal broke through. A neutral envoy from the elder Xanthar species, known for their wisdom and age. "The council will hear humanity's case," the envoy said, "as equals." On Earth, people held their breath. In orbit, Daniel looked at his crew and nodded. The long silence was ending. Not with a bang, but with a chance. The Galactic Council provoked too far, now humanity refuses to bargain. Part 5. The negotiations began not in a grand hall with towering pillars and echoing voices, but in a quiet chamber aboard a neutral Xanthar vessel drifting between Proxima and Sol space. The Xanthar, ancient and slow-moving, believed true understanding came not from speeches, but from silence and shared meals. So for 3 days, human and council delegates sat together, eating simple food, drinking water drawn from recycled ice, and speaking only when necessary. President Lisa Morgan led the human side. She brought no generals, no lawyers, only Kevin Ortiz for technical matters, and Commander Ryan Ellis for security insight. Across the table sat a new council delegation, No Villarreal, who had been quietly removed from his post. In his place was Elder Takara of the Jil, her smooth blue skin shimmering under soft light, and Shivra of the Qatari, her shell-like head tilted in quiet observation. Even a young Virel named Joran sat among them, chosen by his people to represent a new generation. They did not argue over who was right. They spoke of what was fair. Lisa asked for permanent mining rights beyond Sol, not as a favor, but as a necessity. Kevin explained how human tech could help repair aging council infrastructure if shared openly. Ryan offered joint patrols along contested borders to prevent future misunderstandings. The council delegates listened. For the first time, they saw humans not as loud upstarts, but as partners who had earned their place through patience, sacrifice, and courage. After 10 days, an agreement was reached. Humanity would keep all current off-world operations. They would receive full representation on the council, with voting rights on matters affecting younger species. In return, they agreed to share non-military innovations, clean energy methods, medical advances, and sustainable habitat designs, with all council members who requested them in good faith. There would be no reparations, no punishments, no shame. Only a new beginning. When the news reached Earth, there were no wild celebrations, no fireworks or parades. People simply went outside, looked up at the night sky, and felt something shift inside them. A weight had lifted, not because the fight was over, but because they had been seen. Truly seen. On Mars, miners returned to the deep tunnels with new contracts and fair pay. On Europa, children played in warmed tunnels while doctors unpacked fresh supplies. In lunar cities, students studied alien languages not as enemies but as neighbors. The Stellar Response Fleet did not disband. It changed. Some ships became peacekeepers, patrolling trade lanes to protect all species from pirates and smugglers. Others became rescue vessels answering distress calls from any ship, human or not. Ryan Ellis, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, made it clear. Strength was not for domination, but for protection. Daniel Hicks remained captain of the Perseverance, but his missions changed too. Instead of watching for threats, he escorted Qatari traders through unstable sectors. He helped Zil scientists map clean water sources on dry worlds. Once, he even gave a tour of his ship to a group of wide-eyed Virel cadets who had only known humans through old council warnings. Back on Earth, Lisa Morgan walked alone one evening along the coast of San Diego. The ocean stretched before her, dark and endless, much like space. Beside her stood Dr. Kevin Ortiz, his hands in his pockets, watching the waves. "We didn't just win a seat. she said softly. We reminded them that fairness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing there is. Kevin nodded. They thought we'd break under pressure. Instead, we built something better. In the months that followed, the council changed in ways no one predicted. The old system of senior species deciding for all was replaced by a rotating council where every voice mattered. Fringe species gained representation. Trade became open and honest. Even the data networks were updated to include human protocols, making communication faster and more secure for everyone. Humanity did not become rulers of the stars. They became equals among many, and in doing so, they gave others the courage to speak up too. 1 year after the agreement, a ceremony was held on a newly built space station halfway between Earth and the Gil homeworld. It was named the Common Ground. Delegates from over 30 species gathered, not in uniforms or robes of office, but in simple clothes, sharing food and stories. Lisa Morgan stood at the center, not as a president, but as a person. She held up a small vial of earth soil, a gift from a farmer in Iowa. Next to her, Elder Takara poured a drop of ocean water from her world into the same container. Shivra added a piece of polished shell. Joran placed a single viral seed inside. We are different, Lisa said to the crowd, but we choose to grow together. The vial was sealed and placed in the station's heart, a symbol that unity was not about being the same, but about respecting what made each other unique. Far away, on the bridge of the Perseverance, Daniel Hicks received a message from Earth. It was just a photo, Lisa standing by the ocean smiling. He showed it to his crew. Carter wiped her eyes. Rojas grinned. Outside the viewport, stars burned steady and bright. Ships from many species passed by, some human, some not, all moving freely. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had joined it, and in doing so they had changed it. Not with weapons, but with the simple, unshakable belief that no one should have to beg for their right to exist. The Council had provoked too far, and humanity, in its quiet, stubborn way, had refused to bargain. Now they built.